I want also to express to you, to your government and your people, our deep gratitude for the remarkable job that you have done in preparing for this largest conference, indeed, largest intergovernmental conference ever, and for the warmth and the generosity with which you have welcomed us here. Our gratitude extends too to Governor Brizola and to Mayor Alencar, who have joined you so wholeheartedly in this. Today, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, the capital of our planet removes to this beautiful city of Rio de Janeiro. There surely could be no better place to hold this historic Earth Summit. This great country of Brazil, which takes pride in being part of the developing world, is in fact a universe in itself, rich in the resources with which nature has endowed it, and in the diversity, the vitality, the creativity, and the charm of its people. It is at the same time one of the leading industrial countries of the world, one of its most urbanized, and while containing some of its greatest frontier areas. The Eco Brazil exhibition in Sao Paulo and Ecotech 92 here in Rio have demonstrated too the impressive quality and range of Brazil's scientific and technological capabilities. The economic, social, and environmental challenges which Brazil is tackling today with such characteristic vigor and dynamism mirror the whole panoply of issues that this conference is addressing. And the initiatives that Brazil has taken under your leadership, Mr. President, in dealing with some of your most important environment and development issues domestically, have set an enlightened and promising example to the international community. Today, all Brazilians can take pride, special pride, in their country and in their president. I commend you, Mr. President, and distinguished Secretary General Boutros Ghali, who I am very proud to serve, for your inspiring statements which have made clear the awesome nature of the challenges which confront this conference. Indeed, it will define the state of political will to save our planet and to make it, in the words of the Earth Pledge, a secure and hospitable home for present and future generations. Mr. President, this is not a single-issue conference. Rather, it deals with the overall cause and effect system through which a broad range of human activities interact to shape our future. 20 years ago at Stockholm, representatives of 113 of the world's nations took the first steps on a new journey of hope for the future of our only one Earth. Today, in this beautiful city of Rio de Janeiro, you have come together as representatives of more than 178 nations in this unprecedented parliament of the planet to take the decisions needed to rekindle that hope and give it new substance and impetus. For we must soberly admit that despite significant progress made since 1972 in many areas, the hopes ignited at Stockholm remain as yet largely unfulfilled. As the World Commission on Environment and Development made clear, and I'm so pleased that the distinguished chairman of that commission is here and will be addressing us this morning, Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland of Norway. In its landmark report, Our Common Future, it documented clearly that the environment, natural resources, and life support systems of our planet have, in fact, continued to deteriorate, while global risks like those of climate change and ozone depletion have become more immediate and acute. Yet, all the environmental deterioration and risks that we have experienced to date have occurred at levels of population and human activity that are much less than they will be in the period ahead. And the underlying conditions that have produced this dilemma remain as the dominant driving forces that continue to shape our future and threaten our survival. Central to the issues that we are going to be dealing with here are patterns of production and consumption in the industrialized world that are undermining the Earth's life support systems. And the explosive increase in population, largely in the developing world, that is adding 250,000 people daily. Deepening disparities between rich and poor that leave some 75% of humanity struggling to live. And an economic system that takes no account of ecological costs or damage, one which views unfettered growth as progress. Mr. President, we have been the most successful species ever. We are now a species out of control. Our very success is leading us to the dangerous future that has brought us here. The concentration of population growth in developing countries and economic growth in the industrialized countries has deepened, creating imbalances which are unsustainable either in environmental or economic terms. Since 1972, world population has grown by 1.7 billion people, equivalent to almost the entire population of the planet at the beginning of this century. 1.5 billion of these live in the developing countries which are least able to support them. Each individual person is precious, and the planet must honor and support all its children. But overall, this growth cannot continue. Population must be stabilized, and rapidly. If we do not do it, nature will, and much more brutally. During the same 20-year period, world GDP increased by $20 trillion, yet only 15% of the increase accrued to developing countries. Over 70% went to the already rich, adding further to their disproportionate pressures on the environment, resources, and life support systems of our planet. This is the other part of the population problem, the fact that every child born in the developed country consumes 20 to 30 times the resources of the planet that a third world child consumes. The same processes of economic growth which have produced such unprecedented levels of wealth and power for the rich majority and promise a better world for all have given rise also to the risks and imbalances that now threaten the future of rich and poor alike. This growth model and the patterns of production and consumption which have accompanied it, let us be clear, is simply not sustainable for the rich, nor can it be replicated by the poor. To continue along this pathway could lead to the end of our civilization. Yet the poor need economic and social development as the only means of relieving the vicious circle of poverty in which they are caught up. Their right to development cannot be denied, nor should it be impeded by conditions unilaterally imposed on the financial flows or trade of developing countries. The rich must take the lead in bringing their development under control, reducing substantially their impacts on the environment, leaving environmental space for developing countries to grow. The wasteful and destructive lifestyles of the rich cannot be maintained at the cost of the lives and livelihoods of the poor and of nature. Mr. President, the 27 principles of the Rio Declaration, which builds on the Stockholm Declaration, clearly represent a major step forward in establishing the basic principles that must govern the conduct of nations and people towards each other and the earth in order to ensure a secure and sustainable future. I recommend to you that you approve them in their present form and that they serve as a basis for future negotiation of an Earth Charter, which could be approved on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. Agenda 21, Mr. President, distinguished delegates, is the product of an extensive process of preparation at the professional level and negotiation at the political level in which you have been all deeply involved. I hope, too, that you would agree that the new and additional funds that must come from the international community may be channeled, at least initially, through a number of existing institutions and programs, including an appropriately revised global environmental facility. Mr. President, all this calls for a new sense of real partnership. Traditional notions of foreign aid and of the donor-recipient syndrome are simply no longer an appropriate basis for North-South relations. The world community must move towards a more objective and consistent system of effecting resource transfers similar to that used to redress imbalances and ensure equity within national societies. Financing the transition to sustainable development should not be seen merely in terms of extra costs and burdens, but rather as an indispensable investment in global environmental security. Such investments also make good economic sense. It is no accident that those countries and those corporations which use energy and materials most efficiently are also those which are most successful economically. The reverse is also true, for poor economic performance is almost invariably accompanied by poor environmental performance and conditions. The importance of eco-efficiency was indeed the principal theme of the groundbreaking report, Changing Course, prepared by the Business Council for Sustainable Development as its contribution to this conference. And Mr. President, nowhere is efficiency more important than in the use of energy. The transition to a more energy-efficient economy that weans us off our over-dependence on fossil fuels is imperative to the achievement of sustainable development. The removal of trade barriers and discriminatory subsidies would enable developing countries to earn several times more than the amounts they now receive by way of official development assistance. Large-scale reduction of their current debt burdens could provide most of the new and additional resources they require to make the transition to sustainable development through pursuit and implementation of Agenda 21. Mr. President, we also need new ways of financing environment and development objectives. For example, emission permits that are tradable internationally, taxes on polluting products or activities like the CO2 taxes now being levied or proposed by a number of countries. Agenda 21 measures for eradication of poverty and the economic enfranchisement of the poor provide the basis for a new worldwide war on poverty. And indeed, I urge you to take this opportunity to adopt the eradication of poverty as a priority objective for the entire world community as we move into the 21st century.